Welcome to the Underdog Sniper Podcast. I am your host, MGCovers. This is episode 70. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Appreciate you being patient. Normally, I would get this out on a Monday, but got tied up with personal stuff, so wasn't able to get the podcast or record it on Monday. But here we are for Tuesday for episode 70. Super excited. A new big number, so to speak. So we only have 30 more episodes till we hit 100, which is going to be really cool. But obviously, I've been consistent with this since I made a decision to go to a weekly podcast. A lot to get into. We'll tell you a little bit about my outline for this podcast. Got a pretty cool golf update that ties into numbers and showing you how you can exploit and use numbers to your advantage. And then we're going to talk about Major League Baseball, show you the tracker, give you my thoughts on realistically probably 2 weeks left of Major League Baseball when you can actually wager, in my opinion. We're going to look at soccer. I'll give you an update on soccer. We started actually wagering via the model and show you a very interesting twist to soccer. And I've mentioned this concept before, and it's super, super, super simple. You can apply it to really any sport, but it works well, I think, for some of the sports where you have a long season like Major League Baseball, soccer, even NBA to some degree. And we're going to also show it and apply it to Major League Baseball as well. So anyway, before we dive into Major League Baseball, I'm going to talk about a personal goal here. Is I've always had a goal, or I guess it's maybe a dream at this point, to be a scratch golfer. I'm currently a 3.3 handicap index, which is very good, but not even close to being scratch. My home course here in the Dominican, where I play on the blue tees, is a 71 slope. And if you don't know anything about golf, that means in order to be scratch, I have to shoot a 71, or I play 9 holes every day. So I got to shoot par on 9 holes and then shoot 1 under on the next 9 holes for a composite of 71 and I got to shoot that 8 out of 20 times. And if I did that, I'd be scratched. Well, the problem is here we have a ton of wind. So the blue tees are very, very, very difficult. There's 2 par 4s I cannot reach. So once I tee off on those from the blue tees, I put myself in the hole, meaning I'm already giving up a stroke. So what I did was I started to brainstorm. I said, you know what, I'm going to move up to the whites, which plays under 6,000 yards. I think it's like 5,900, but it's a 68 rating, which means I have to shoot 2 under. Actually, I have to shoot 4 under for 18 holes combined, 8 out of 20 times. So I started this experiment. I wrote down all my distances. Now it will make it easier. And one of the reasons I shifted to this, and this is understanding numbers, I'm a very good putter. That's the highlight of my game. I drive it probably 225 is my carry. We don't get a lot of roll here. It's sort of a soft course, so we don't get a lot of roll. So if you hit it 225, sometimes that's the distance you have on the drive, but I'm a very good putter. So I figured being shorter, having more putting opportunities, hit more greens and reg, this might help. Now, the good news is I've done this the last 2 days, had 2 birdies 2 days ago. So if I'd have shot par on everything else, that would have been 2 under. I had 2 birdies yesterday. That would have gotten me, I would have done it had I shot par on all the other holes, but unfortunately got into some trouble. So I ended up shooting 2 over 2 days ago and 2 over yesterday. So for combined is 76. So unfortunately, if I put this in on the index, it actually registered, it gave me an index rating of like 7.7, I think. So the danger of doing this, my handicap could increase, but I'm definitely going to give this a shot and try to improve and really navigate around the course, because now I take driving distance out of it. So the only thing I can spend more time on my short game and my wedges under 100, because I'll have a lot of shorter approaches, 90 yards, 120, 130, etc. So I'm anxious to see if I could actually pull this off in the next 3 months. So just going to play from the white tees and see if we can do it. So super excited about that. I'll keep you updated on this podcast. So anyway, if you're bored by that, let's dive into some sports betting and we'll take a look at some Major League Baseball. If you're new or watching a podcast for the first time, we have actually struggled Major League Baseball. We had just phenomenal years the last 2 years, right at 80 units combined. This year has been very difficult. Tried a lot of different things. The old model didn't really work. Realized that pitching was had caught up with hitting. And I'm going to talk about why right now, which is very fascinating. And so we made some adjustments to the model. And so what I realized was playing only dogs, but using our F5 line when we have a big difference in our F5 line. I know it sounds weird, but so we only play if a team has an F5 line of 3.2 and their opponent is 4.0 or higher. So we get a decent spread there, and we play for that team. Just playing dogs and tracking it since 7-2. We weren't playing it since 7-2. We've only been playing this since August. It's 15-9, up 10.17 units. Lost the last two here. And what's interesting, and you've heard me talk about this before, the beginning of the year is not the best time to wager, meaning like the opening day, because you don't have any data. Trying to rely on last year's data is very difficult. That's a difficult time to wager. And also near the end of the year, which is going to be September. So if you take those out, your prime picking, so to speak, for making profit for baseball specifically is going to be May, June, July, and August. So we're reaching that window where now it's going to be very difficult. And if you look from this particular model, handicapping it this way, from 730 to 772, basically all of July, it was up 9.66 units. August, it is 0.51 units. So already starting to, I guess, regress to some degree. I mean, it's still profitable, but not like it was in July. And you can see it's averaging, gosh, what's that? Almost less than, one play a day for pretty much two plays on the first, one on the second, two on the fourth, one on the fifth, nothing until the ninth. And then that one play with Minnesota yesterday against the Yankees, couldn't get it done. Definitely reached probably the end. I'll probably go ahead and wager small here for the next couple of weeks until we segue into college football. But needless to say, it's been disappointing. Now, one positive I may have mentioned this last week. I've kept the current model and all of the data. I've been tracking that since, I guess, all the way into July. So I've got a very, very, very good data sample. So maybe before the start of Major League Baseball season, I can go back and look at some of that data and try to figure out, make some corrections. But one thing was interesting, and back to golf again, I played golf, was it 2 days ago or 3 days ago, with a former Major League Baseball player. Now, he made it to AA, lives here in the Dominican for the Houston Astros. He gave me some incredible insight, and it's so obvious when you think about it. And I was telling him what I did, and I said, hey, pitching now has caught up with hitting, whereas if you go back, 3 years ago, and then, of course, last year with the model was still profitable. We didn't use any pitching stats, and, of course, now we incorporate them in. He brought up this particular fact. This is so fascinating. The average Major League Baseball pitcher, I can't remember how many years ago this was. It wasn't that long ago, averaged 93 miles an hour. So if you took all the Major League Baseball pitchers together, they averaged 93 miles an hour. So if you're a Major League hitter, average speed on that ball coming to the plate is 93 miles an hour. Today, it is now 97 miles an hour. That's huge, right? And what was interesting, he even brought up the point is that there's even some people inside Major League Baseball, this will never happen, but making an argument to potentially moving back to pitcher's mound. Probably will never happen, right? Because baseball seems to be a, quote, traditional sport, but it gives you some incredible insight into why it's so difficult for hitters now and why pitching has caught up. Because he made the point, as a hitter, if you are waiting on, say, a curveball, and if you don't know anything about baseball, when you hear batters say, hey, I'm waiting on, or let's say he's waiting on a curveball. So if you're anticipating the pitcher's throwing a curveball, so it's going to be a little off speed, and you get a fastball, you're not hitting it. And just the fact that 97 miles an hour is very, very, it's very difficult to hit. And he also brought up, that's why you haven't really seen that much reduction in home runs, because if you're sitting on a fastball, meaning you're anticipating as a batter, hey, I think this is going to be a fastball. He throws you a fastball, you connect 97 miles an hour, put a little bit of bat on it, boom, it's gone. Oh, but it does prove the point that pitching is definitely caught up with hitting. And I think it's something that, I'll figure out a way to combine it in the off season, and partly the reason why this model didn't work, this year. So everything's always changing. One other segue into that interesting point, overs in NFL preseason went 14-2. Overs. And remember, we talked about the last couple of years, all these unders were hitting. Unders hit like crazy in the offseason. So you have the teams adjust. So they're trying to score more points. And also the books adjust to some degree. You know what I mean? So super fascinated. We'll continue to follow that story. I haven't researched that to give you any kind of insight, but it might be something I do in the future. And might talk about on the podcast. So we'll keep an eye out for that. All right, let's slide over here to soccer now. Let me pull up this log for you. Okay, now this is soccer. Unfortunately, we had the last 4 have been losses. And this is typical irony of how difficult this business is. You look down there, 8-9 was when we started. We didn't play this Corinthians last night, but we did play Austin and Vancouver. Austin was winning 2-0 going to the 79th minute. Opponent scored 2 goals, ended up losing that. That is what I call, obviously, a bad beat. I call it unexplained house edge, because that means you will lose more bad beats than you will have bad beat wins. It's just something that exists in this industry that's unexplained. Even if you have a winning record, if you're losing better, obviously you have a bigger sample size of losses than wins. So you're going to have more, quote, bad beats. But even for a winning handicapper like myself, we'll still have more bad beat losses than bad beat wins. Same deal with Vancouver. Vancouver was winning 1-0 at halftime and gave up 2 goals there in the second half to lose that one. Of course, didn't play Corinthians, but overall, this model, and still excited, still will continue to wage soccer here into the fall. 51 and 52, 13 units. If you look over here to the right, what this is just, I want to check it with other leagues. This is just the Brazil Series A and MLS. So basically the spring leagues, 30 and 36 up 8.31 units. And I think we're averaging, let me go up here to the top. Yeah, our ROI is 11%. Average odds is plus 133. So that's really good. Again, a lot of ways to do this business. Some of you may have subscribed to Eric's plays. He's our UFC handicapper, just having an incredible year. I think his average line he plays is like minus 142, but he's hitting 71% year to date. There's the difference in that spread. So obviously he's profitable. I think he's up 34 units. I just posted that on Instagram. So if you're averaging plus 133 odds and you're hitting 50%, you're going to be profitable as well. But what's interesting, like I've always said, when you're looking at a log, which is why it's always important to track anything, even if you're not wagering. If you are wagering, you want to track your real wagers. If you're just tracking a model, you want to make sure that or if you're testing a model, you make sure you keep very detailed trackers so you can go back and audit your losses and see if you can improve it. So what I was looking at, I looked at these last 4 losses: Flamingo, Austin, Vancouver, and Corinth. And if you flip over to, if we pull this up, so all right, let me show you how I arrived at this, because I think this can help a lot of people here. Give me 1 second to pull this up. Okay. So what you're looking at, this is Brazil Series A, and this is I guess like the form chart, if that's red, just turn on. Yeah, y'all can see it. All right. So if you look at Flamingo, you have this gray area. That's their next match. This green one here is the last match they played. So what we're going to do for this exercise, we're going to look at the last 4 matches. Okay. So you look at Flamingo, they've won 3 out of their last 4. All right. Now let's take a look at Palmeiras. They have won 3 out of their last 4. Let's look at Sao Paulo. Down here, Sao Paulo has won 4 out of their last 4 prior to the game that we're looking at. Now, and those are the only 3 teams that have won 3 out of the last 4 matches. All right. So when we go over here, so what I did was I made note of that. So I guess there's a lot of things you could classify this. And let me go ahead and tell you what this is. This is form. The reason, and I've said this in past videos, those of you that follow me, form is the most undervalued situational angle in all of sports handicapping. And the reason form is so important, it's almost a cheat code for a model. So if you can see in that exercise, Flamingo, Palmeiras, Sao Paulo won 3 out of the last 4 matches. We didn't use any stats to figure out why they won. We just know that they won 3 out of the last 4. So they're in really good form. So rather than trying to figure out what stat correlates to winning, how that happened, etc., you just simply use the cheat code of form. And if you go to my page and Google form, sports handicap, and MGCovers, I've made several videos of this in the past, so it's a good review for me. So then we look at Flamingo, Palmeiras, Sao Paulo, that next match. We'll go back to this tab here. Flamingo won 3 out of the last 4. This particular match here, they won 2-1 with odds of minus 312. So debatable whether or not you could afford to pay that kind of juice, because again, a lot of juice to lay in a sport where more times than not, at best, you're going to have a 50% win percentage. So look at Palmeiras. So they won 3 out of the last 4. Look what happens in that next match. They win 2-1. I'm not sure what the odds were. And then Sao Paulo, I know Sao Paulo was like minus 130 or something. So you got pretty favorable odds. They had won 4 out of the last 4, but they qualified based on the criteria I was using. They win. Let's take a look at MLS now. So we see here San Diego won 2 out of the last 4. So that doesn't qualify. Keep scrolling down. You have Seattle. They had won 2 out of the 4. Doesn't qualify. Keep scrolling. Now we finally have Real Salt Lake. We actually played this. This is one of the ones we played. They had won 3 out of the 4, but they lost. They were, I think, right at even odds, plus 100, I believe. Nothing for no other team had won 3 out of the last 4. Keep going. Let's take a look at Philadelphia. Philadelphia had won 3 out of the last 4, ended up tying that match. The next one here, Charlotte had won 4 out of their last 4. Charlotte won. Yeah, let me show this one. Charlotte won I do want to show you this odds of this. Check this out. They were away. They cashed at plus 300. I didn't count Philadelphia. So let me show you this tracker. We're all over the place right now. My bad. I think the reason why I didn't include Philadelphia is they were minus 278. So if we look at this tracker, the way we could do this, we could X out Flamingo here because they were minus, I think like 200. We wouldn't count Philadelphia because they were like minus 200. We had to lay a lot. So if we exclude those, we had Charlotte cashed as a plus 300, Real Salt Lake lost, and of course, Sao Paulo and Palmeiras both won. So you could cap it at, say, you would play any team up to minus 150. So form is definitely a cheat code. And what I want to show you now, let's segue and apply this to Major League Baseball because this is super fascinating. All right. I'm at covers.com. Very good resource site. You can find a lot of useful information there, a lot of back testing. You can do a lot of manual back testing. So Philadelphia, Cincinnati last night. Let's take a look at the matchups. Let's click on Philadelphia here. And so this was the game that was in question, the one being played. If we look at the previous 5 games, win, loss, win. So for Major League Baseball, you could do teams that have won 3 out of the last 5, but are dogs on the following game. And you could see there that would qualify as a play. Philadelphia was plus 117. They win 4-1 over Cincy. All right, let's scroll down and look at Houston and Boston here. Click on the matchup. We click on Houston. All right. And Houston, 1, 2, 3. So you can see Houston won 3 out of their last 5. And in the game last night versus Boston, they were plus 138 dogs and they win. So again, going back to form, again, you don't have to know or research and investigate what stat is correlating to winning. We're simply using form. Now, the original way that I learned form and how to apply it was from Bob McCune. And this is another thing to learn, very important, is what he would do. He described I can't remember the sport, but you would use your model. Your model is the objective part of handicapping. And then a lot of times the trigger point would be form. And this is something that I'm going to test with the NBA model as well. The NBA model last year, very, very, very profitable. And I think we can make it even more profitable, eliminating teams that are in bad form. So I might have, we look at the model, which is the objective part. And then if it says Orlando Magic is a play, we go to their form and they've won 1 of their last 5 games, it will be a no play, right? And so you could use form as the trigger point. And again, form is what we call a subjective part of handicapping, similar to line movement, similar to injuries, etc. But as I'm showing here, it could be something that you could tweak. And again, I'm just showing you an example of 5 games. I'm not saying that's the way to do it. You could do this for hockey. You could use the last 10 games. You could use NBA, do the last 7 games. You could try it for WNBA using a different sample size. But it's definitely something that correlates to the saying that I've always said, and this is so true in sports betting: the best indication of future performance is most recent performance. Okay. And again, this was what I would call a typical 50-50 game. So you can see here, they got to make one of these teams the dog, and it probably was related to pitching. Obviously, Houston was still in good form, hitting the ball really well, and, ended up getting dog money and winning just based on form. So a lot of times in this business, just keeping things extremely simple. Most of my model, I've never had a form-based model where I exclusively wagered form, just full disclosure. But I think if it's something that you focused on, you could generate a model out of it, maybe for soccer, for Major League Baseball, NBA, a lot of these. I think it would be difficult to do it for NFL or maybe college football because it's such a short season. But some of these sports that's long, NBA would be really good for that. Major League Baseball, because a lot of times, especially if it's a bad team overall that has a losing record, but they're in really good form, they're probably going to be undervalued in the marketplace. You're looking at exclusively form, saying, hey, this team's playing really well. We're getting dog money. It's a pretty good play. So very interesting way to handicap. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. Talk to you guys next week. Peace.